Right now, as you're listening to this, there is an entire universe of hidden machinery hard at work inside your body. So today, we're going to take a tour of that incredible and honestly pretty surprising world.
I mean, what if you could actually see it all in real time? Every nerve firing like a tiny bolt of lightning, every muscle pumping like a powerful engine, every little support beam holding you up. Well, that's the journey we're about to take.
So get ready. This is a fast-paced tour that might just change the way you think about your own body forever.
Okay, first up, let's look at your body's electrical grid. Hidden just underneath your chest muscles is a network of nerves so intricate, it's just a marvel of biological engineering.
This right here is the brachial plexus. You can think of it as the main power junction box for your entire arm and chest. Pretty much any signal that lets you lift, throw, or even type on a keyboard gets routed through here.
And this is where the complexity just gets wild. 17, not one or two, 17 distinct nerve branches split off from this one single hub. That is an incredible piece of biological design.
But what happens when that wiring gets, well, frayed or compressed? This is where the story gets really fascinating and, honestly, a little unnerving.
So let's just focus on one of those 17 branches, the musculocutaneous nerve. Its main job sounds simple, but it's absolutely vital. It tells your biceps to contract so you can bend your elbow. When everything's working right, the whole process is seamless. The signal just zips down the nerve. It passes right through a smaller muscle on its way, and bam, just like that, your biceps fires. Simple, right?
But here's the catch. Remember how that nerve has to pass through another muscle? So what happens if that muscle gets inflamed and decides to squeeze down on the nerve?
Well, this exact thing happened to a college athlete. He was overtraining, and that smaller muscle swelled up and literally crunched the nerve that was passing through it. The signal was blocked, and just like that, his powerful biceps was paralyzed. It's a crazy reminder that even a tiny overlooked muscle can shut down a major one.
And believe me, this kind of vulnerability isn't just in your arm. A similar kind of pinch point in your thigh can have even more dramatic consequences.
I want you to meet the femoral nerve. This is the main power line for your quadriceps. You know, the big muscles on the front of your thigh that straighten your leg.
Now, if this nerve got compressed, you wouldn't be able to extend your knee. Think about that for a second. That means no standing up from a chair, no climbing stairs, no kicking a ball. The connection would just be cut off.
So, we've seen how the wiring powers the muscles, but what about the engines themselves? Well, it turns out there are some really common myths about how our muscles actually work. When you think of the trapezius muscle, your traps, you probably picture someone in the gym shrugging their shoulders up to their ears. But that is only a tiny, tiny part of the story. Here's the big misunderstanding. When you shrug, the trapezius isn't really moving your shoulder joint at all. Nope, it's lifting your scapula, your shoulder blade. The shoulder joint is just kind of tagging along for the ride.
In reality, the trapezius is a master multitasker. It helps you look up at the sky, it pulls your shoulder blades together, and it rotates them when you lift your arm over your head. Shrugging is just the most visible of its many, many important jobs.
Now, let's talk about another famous muscle group, the hamstrings. First off, what you might not know is that the hamstrings isn't one muscle, but three. And they don't just bend your knee. They are also absolutely crucial for extending your hip. That's the powerful motion you use when you run or jump.
All right, for our last stop, let's talk about the unsung heroes of your anatomy. The simple yet totally brilliant structures that hold everything together and keep the whole show on the road.
Have you ever heard of the extensor retinaculum? Yeah, probably not. But this little band of tissue on the back of your wrist is absolutely essential. Honestly, the best way to think about it is as a piece of biological tape. It holds down all the tendons that run to your fingers. Without it, and this is a little weird to think about, every time you bent your wrist back, those tendons would pop up and literally tent your skin. It's such an elegant and simple solution.
And what about your windpipe, the trachea? It's supported by these rings of cartilage, but they're not full circles. They're C-shaped, and this design is pure genius. The C is stiff enough to keep your airway from collapsing, but the open part at the back gives your esophagus room to expand when you swallow.
And speaking of swallowing, let's look at the epiglottis. It's basically a simple flap of cartilage that acts like a perfect little trapdoor. When you swallow, it flips down, covers your windpipe, and makes sure food goes down the right tube. It's a silent guardian, protecting you with every single bite you take.
So from these complex nerve networks to multitasking muscles and super clever connective tissues, your body is just a universe of hidden marvels. And all of this is happening right now, perfectly, without a single conscious thought from you. It really makes you wonder, what other incredible systems